Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Wizards Presents, and I want to talk about the most surprising thing I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, I want to talk about Wizards Presents, and I want to tell you what I think is the most shocking thing that came out of Wizards Presents. I'm not going to bury the lead, here we go! D&D Planescape? What? What? That's weird. So let's talk about this. Okay. Okay. Why is that strange? Why on earth do we need Planescape? It is quite literally exactly the same, in my humble opinion, as Radiant, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. They do the same thing. It's a weird city that serves as a portal to a whole bunch to the multiverse, right? You go to this one place, and it will allow you to traverse to all the places in the multiverse. Now, and basically when Planescape came out, I think it's back in the 90s. By the way, Planescape was born 100% under Lorraine Williams. That's her baby, right? And so Planescape, the whole purpose of it was to take you to all the Dungeons & Dragons realms, right? And you did that through this city called Sigil, right? Well, the Radiant Citadel is literally the same thing as Sigil. It's just one place. You go there, right? And it takes you to all the different, and actually, we know, yeah, holy cows, wow, there's so much change. I love these new announcements from Wizards of the Coast. They're so bold, right? So one of the things is, Planescape, the purpose of it was to take you from one D&D realm to another, right? Now, we don't really talk about planes, we talk about the multiverse, right? And that's important. Pay attention to that, because the word multiverse is extremely important, right? Because the reality is, it's not just D&D realms anymore. Not at all, okay? So it's the multiverse, okay? So the point is, I don't know if I'm excited to see Planescape. You know what? I'm going to say it. I ain't excited to see Planescape. That is a mistake. That is an absolute mistake, right? Like, so one, I love Dungeons & Dragons. This is just like when you get in a dust-up with your best friend, right? Like, you're like, no, you really shouldn't have painted your car purple. Like, it's a bad decision, and it sucks. Or like, this is a bad decision, right? The reality is, it is my humble opinion, but boy, oh boy, in my humble opinion, Journeys to the Radiant Citadel is already fighting for breath, right? I do not hear a lot of people talking about it. It does not seem to have just, grasped the Dungeons & Dragons community by the throat and be like, look at me, I'm awesome. It seems like people were not there for it, and it has not hit the way I think the creators would have hoped, right? Maybe I'm wrong about that. Are you seeing a lot of Journeys to the Radiant Citadel games being run and played? I'm not seeing it, right? Maybe it's just, my small circle or whatever, but I'm not seeing it, right? And the reality is, Planescape has massive nostalgic value. The moment they introduce Planescape, there's going to be a lot of people who are super excited to see Planescape return. And honestly, since Radiant Citadel does exactly the same thing as Planescape, weird city that is just a cluster of portals to a bunch of other places, right? Portal, crystal, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, it's just a location that takes you from one section of Dungeons & Dragons multiverse to another section of Dungeons & Dragons. They do the same thing. It's simply a location. Planescape is going to virtually destroy Journeys to Radiant Citadel because people know it, right? It's been around since the 1990s. The heart of Dungeons & Dragons was Gary Gygax. The mind of Dungeons & Dragons was Lorraine Williams. Planescape was birthed completely by Lorraine Williams. It is part of her brilliance. It is part of her Dungeons & Dragons legacy, right? And frankly, like, if Radiant Citadel had gotten some follow-up books, right? And there are get this. What Dungeons & Dragons settings have gotten follow-up books in the last 10 years. In the last 8 years. In the last 8 years. To my knowledge, one. Right? That's Exandria, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. The follow was Call of the Netherdeep. Right? So that's harsh, man. That is harsh. Right? So the reality is, if Radiant Citadel had gotten a little bit, by the way, Journeys through the Radiant Citadel, horrible title, absolutely horrible title. They should just call it Radiant Citadel to be done. Like Journeys through the Radiant, it's too long. So Radiant Citadel, if it had a follow-up book or 2 or 3, might have had a chance. That thing's going to be forgotten when Planescape come out. I think that's wrong. I do not think they should have ever done. Once Radiant Citadel was printed, I think that should have meant that Planescape would never be printed, because they do exactly the same thing. And I think Radiant Citadel did a perfectly good job of it did what Planescape did. And frankly, I just don't think Planescape was needed, right? Once Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel was printed, Planescape, the door on Planescape should have slammed. Because the reality is, I definitely think that Radiant Citadel is going to become a forgotten book at this point. And that is wrong. That is wrong. That book, because of what it did, because of the history it made for Dungeons & Dragons, the first book with all persons of color authors, it should have been given more time to breathe. It really should have been given more. Actually, should have been given forever to breathe. The Planescape is completely duplicate of it, and it shouldn't have been done. Also, I need to tell you, I was wrong, right? I tell you all the time when I'm right. I love saying I'm right, but I need to take my lumps when I'm wrong. And I said, there ain't no way Planescape is getting printed again, is coming to Dungeons & Dragons again. No way Planescape's getting a new book, right, under one D&D. And the reason why is it would duplicate everything Radiant Citadel. I said, flat out, you're never going to see Planescape. I was 100% wrong. You heard it first. Sometimes Scott Garibay is wrong. It's extremely rare, right? Don't celebrate too much. But I was wrong. And honestly, I do think this was a huge mistake on the part of Wizards of the Coast. They once Radiant Citadel was printed, Planescape should have never seen the light of day again, right? And the reality is, when these two books virtually fight, they're going to be a victor and they're going to be a defeat. Ain't nobody going to put Radiant Citadel over Planescape. That ain't the way of the world, man. When someone got 20, 30 years of history, some newcomer ain't, like, if you ask anybody on this planet, who do you want to see live, Justin Bieber or Elvis, who's going to choose Justin Bieber, right? Like, that's just the way of it. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.